Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another epi of My name is Eric. My name is Solo. On today's epi for your first installment of Global Power Rankings for Split 2. And listen, it's early. It's bottom of the barrel. We're talking 2 games played for some of the squads that have to make this list, especially when you're talking about the LCP not even kicking off. So we're only dealing with 4 major regions heading into this, which, yes, it does mean it's slim pickings, and there's probably some squads on this list oh so early that will absolutely most definitely not be on this list in a couple of weeks. But we're just working with what we've got so far, and we're working and waiting until we can actually get some more games to hype up some of these guys. And case in point, when you're seeing a Cloud9 squad on this list who got pumped by Sniper's Riven, and they didn't get pumped, but they were on the backseat, on the back burner against Shopify for about maybe 15-20 minutes before they turned that game around. This is going to be the theme, the buzzword of the day. It's a way too early reaction. We don't have enough games. They haven't played, they played 100 Thieves, who are supposedly good, but they haven't had any real or enough competition. But Blabber looked really good in that game against Shopify that they did, even though he got behind very early against Contracts. He bounced back. Sven and Vulcan last split were competitive bot laners, and obviously the synergy's built in there. And by the way, I forgot to preface, for this whole list, this is a hard cut. This is a fresh restart. We're going purely on Split 2, Spring, whatever you want to call it, in their respective regions. We're not carrying over any baggage from what we got in Split 1. This is purely action and games that we are looking at from the second split here. So, Cloud9, we're not taking over how things finished last year. It's purely what we've seen so far on the Rift. KT Rolster, even though they're 0-2, oh man, poor BDD. He's playing some of the best League of Legends that he has, even this late in his career, but the bot lane is a massive liability for KT. They took a game off of Hanwha Life thanks to an insane Tristana game from BDD, and they had some comeback mechanics and made a couple of games competitive that they shouldn't have against Dplus Kia. But you listen to the teams that I just listed, Hanwha and Dplus, that's a tough opening schedule for KT. They're going to be better than this 0-2 record dictates, especially if BDD keeps playing at the level that he has. 100 Thieves, we just referenced, they took down Cloud9. They had avenues to beat Team Liquid, but this is the same recipe as we've seen time and time again for 100 Thieves. Quid, it's only 2 games, so these numbers are obviously incredibly skewed, but highest goal differential at 15, and highest kill participation and first blood percentage in both of his games. Anyone in the LEC, or LTA, and even all the other major regions. But again, 2 games, 2 single best ofs, not even a best of 3 series, just 2 games. So need a lot more out of 100 Thieves before we fully judge them. But if it is fully just River and Quid, the show season 6, then the ceiling kind of remains the same. They need some more out of Sniper. They need more out of FBI and Ayla. NIP have only played a single series to their name, and even though it was a 2-0 loss at the hands of JDG, as you're going to see, looking like one of the premier teams in the LPL so far. And again, this was a competitive series where the gold was even for, more than 50% of the games before some absolutely spicy, immaculate team fighting out of both Pays, Scout, and the rest of that JDG squad fully came to fruition. So what more are you supposed to judge off of a single best of 3 out of NIP? I still think they have the potential and will probably be climbing much higher on this list as the ascension state of play goes on in the LPL. Team Liquid looked much cleaner against 100 Thieves. We've already talked about some of these Azir engages out of APA, even though Impact still has the most deaths among anyone in the LTA right now, and I think that might have even been major regions as well. It's fine. Nothing to be too worried about because Yon is the best AD carry in the league right now. Continues to look like that very early on. And let's be honest, even this FlyQuest matchup for TL, there's that one overextended team fight where they stick around the dragon for way too long. And that was really where the game went off the rails and completely got out of control for them. Before that, you were thinking maybe there were some ways for Team Liquid to kind of take over and control the game. So no real concern, even though it ended up looking like a blowout against FlyQuest. But again, this kind of bottom 5 area on the top 20 is where we're accustomed to seeing LCP squads. And based on how First Stand played out, fully expecting the Flying Oysters or Talon, whoever's at the top of that league, to be on this list, and maybe even a secondary team we need to be given some acknowledgement to from that region, because when you have squads like Movistar, Koi, and Nongshim this high up the list, and listen, I don't want to harp on Koi because they very easily could have gotten that series against Carmine Corp after they had a kind of egregious mid to late game throw. They took a game off of G2, even though they kind of got stomped in the 2 losses, and then proceeded to stomp Team Heretics. But absolutely feel like this team has not even sniffed what the ceiling of potential is for them. I fully think this team has the capabilities and the skill set to win a title in the LEC. It's just a matter of sorting out that macro type of gameplay, what to do with the lead, what to do when you don't have a lead in the mid to late game. That's something that El Yoya and the boys definitely are going to have to work on. Nongshim, I mean, a perfect 2-0 so far, the only LCK team yet to drop a game, but they've beaten the bottom 2 teams in the LCK. But that doesn't mean we can't give them some praise. Lahens has been an absolute stud through the first couple of series, much like he was the last split, but we're not carrying over any of that because this split alone, Lahens has got the highest XP differential at 15 and has gotten first blood in 3 out of the 4 games for them. And because of that, as we highlighted before, Jiwoo is looking more confident than ever as a guy we've kind of been waiting to step up to that next level. But with his buddy Lahens in the bot lane, we're definitely seeing that growth get a little bit sped up out of him. So I'm very excited to see Nongshim actually be a playoff team potentially again, because Kingen, as we highlighted, has been playing in between that World Finals MVP level and that absolute why are you in the LCK level. There's a big runway in between those 2 levels of play, and we've been seeing him fluctuate between those. FlyQuest, the highest LTA squad. Yes, they went 2-0. I almost said the only 2-0 squad, but shout out to Leon Gaming, who actually have the most ludicrous numbers through the very, 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 very early split 2 action. But obviously the Vladimir and the Yorick out of Whippo were the standouts to see from their first weekend of action. Inspired had a double-digit KDA. Masu didn't really have to do that much, but it was a case of seeing Masu get focused heavily in team fights in really both of these games, and FlyQuest showcasing that they have more avenues than the young rookie or now sophomore phenom in the bot lane. So seeing these multiple avenues of playstyle come out of FlyQuest early is a very positive sign. Carmine Corp and Fnatic to kind of round out these first bundle of top 20 squads. Obviously Fnatic got the head-to-head win, so we felt it's enough to bump them ahead of KC, but there's nothing too egregious to be worried about. Again, incredibly early for Carmine Corp. It was a bad series, let's be honest, from Vladdy in that Fnatic one, and it depends on how you weigh it. Was it a bad series for Vladdy, or did Humanoid have some surprisingly actually consistent 3 straight games, which is a rarity ever since he's been on Fnatic? But either way, if you're on the glass half full kind of guy, you're really excited about Humanoid playing that well. If you're on the glass half empty, you're going to expect more out of Vladdy, and will get more because we've seen it in the past. And really, I think the other development, aside from Khalees continue to being an absolute superstar, is Kana's probably going to end this split as the best top laner in EU and reach that level that we were hoping to see when he first signed on to this KC roster. The Fnatic side of things, the only concern still going forward is how is Oscarinin going to match up in some of these definitely top lane carry-oriented meta, because Early on, 3 series in, he's bottom 5 in gold per minute, damage percentage, CS per minute, vision score, all these pretty important stats among top laners. And if we are pivoting more towards Aurora, Gwen, not Ambessa or Cassante, they'll still be in the meta, but some of these other big picks in the top lane, then Oscar Rinnan's level might definitely be a liability, less so in Europe, but if Fnatic has any hopes, dreams, or aspirations of competing internationally time and time again, it is often the top lane matchup where Western squads fall apart, and hopefully that's not the case for Fnatic, but first and foremost, they actually need to qualify for some of these international events. It's been a long time since we saw crazy top laner The Shy at an international event, and I know people might be a little hesitant to have Invictus Gaming this high on the list, especially after they didn't have the best showing against anyone's legend in their most recent series, but I'm kind of weighing the BLG series, heavy because it's a third of their games so far, but even though they lost 0-2 to BLG, aside from an absolute miracle team fight out of Elk, they're at least winning one game in that matchup, and maybe even, I'm not going to say maybe another, because there were too many guys playing well in that second game for BLG, but at the very least, both games were competitive against the pretty much consensus best team in the LPL. I know Mako has had a slow start, I know people were memeing on The Shy for that AL matchup, but against BLG, hold the silent team, at least the first game. We've seen shades of The Shy where he's turning around 1v3s, and this is always forever going to be the double-edged sword that is The Shy. He's going to draw so much pressure, so much attention from the opposing squad. Sometimes he might push for an extra wave that he shouldn't and die. Sometimes he might be running around the jungle when he shouldn't, and sometimes he's going to turn around a 1v3 and get 2 kills. That's just the good and the bad that you take with one of the GOATs when it comes to the top lane. G2, highest ranking Western squad. Again, if we were including first stand performance, you'd probably have Carmine Corp higher than G2, but looking solely at the game so far in Split 2, G2 has the lowest deaths per game among all major region teams. They've yet to give up a Baron, and Skewmond has some of the craziest numbers early on for junglers. He's got a KDA north of 10. He's second in XPD at 15. Again, among all junglers in major regions, and second in wards cleared, which doesn't sound important, but let me tell you, it's very important, especially when you're talking about a jungler. So the fact that Skewmond is the first name coming out of my mouth when talking about G2 in a positive light speaks to, it's tough because Yike has been so incredible for Carmine Corp, but that shouldn't take away from how good Skewmond is. He's been a top 3 jungler in Europe, even if Yike has maybe been the best jungler in Europe during that stretch. Alluded to anyone's legend ahead of IG. Still waiting on more games from them. This is going to be a top 5 team, and I think is very much in the conversation to be right behind BLG, vying for one of the best teams in the LPL. Tarzan had a fantastic series against IG. Usually it's JJ that's the person we're highlighting on this new look super team IG, but Tarzan absolutely had his number in that matchup. So only 2 series under their belt. We're just waiting for more and more time, because pretty much top to bottom you can talk about anyone's legend players. I don't even want to say overperforming, but Shanks and Hope have quietly been one of the best dual carry threats in the league, and Flandre remains the most heavily scrutinized and underrated player in the league, who's had a pretty damn solid start for anyone's legend. Again, you can go back to last split and say the same thing, but we're hard resetting, looking only at Split 2. Dplus, a perfect 3-0 start so far. Started a little bit slowly, struggling against BNK Fearex, but they looked much better against the Bros. Siwoo quietly has the highest KDA among all top laners from major regions. Lucid has had an incredible start. Remember last split we were talking about him as the best jungler in the LCK for long stretches of the regular season at the very least. The resurgence of Showmaker continues to be a case. I'm making a case for this dude being the best Ahri in the LCK, and that's with Chovy, that's with Faker in the league. He was absolutely clean on the day. Aiming says real, always a treat. Barrel, mostly positive things to say, even though Dplus can be a classic case of playing down to the level of competition. Even though they had a few whoopsie for fun moments against the Bros today, they still came away with the 2-0 and are sitting pretty with that 3-0 immaculate record. Top Esports also 3-0. They've played some of the most games out of any of the LPL teams in that Ascension group. And let me tell you, this squad looks completely different from First Stand, even though they've looked that much better. Again, if we were taking how bad they looked at First Stand, they would be not sniffing the number 6 spot. But so far in the LPL, I mean, they've got some of the best Baron control, goal differential, feats of strength. All their stats in those major categories are top 5. Again, not just in the LPL, among all major region teams so far. And that's with some of these LTA teams only playing 2 games to their name. So I don't know what happened, if it was just embarrassment for how they performed at First Stand, but they look like they're right back into the seat of being a main contender in the LPL, and hopefully they can maintain that all the way through to playoffs to make sure that there is kind of a triumvirate at the very least of competitive LPL teams to go against the absolute churning war machine that is the LCK right now. One of those other teams in the LCK, or LPL, that's sitting pretty as a contender right now is Gen.G Gaming. Pays is still early, but still performed better than Ruler since that swap back happened to JDG. He has been absolutely incredible. Scout is having a renaissance, and I think what's forgotten about on this JDG squad, well, Jun is also having resurgence, but Ale takes so much. He's a little bit like the Shy, where he's taking away so much pressure, so much attention that he doesn't often get the resources, but single-handedly getting himself a laning advantage, which opens up the map for Jun to help mid, to help bot. So I think Ale is the forgotten hero of this JDG lineup, but absolutely some of the best team fighting in the LPL that we've seen. And it's really top Esports. AL and JDG, I think, are absolutely the forefronts to be that 1B to the BLG War Machine, which we'll get to in a minute. But I'm really excited that JDG things have come online a lot faster than I think people were expecting, with this fully revamped lineup with pretty much only missing returning from what we got last year. So hype to see them continue to grow. Hanwha Life starting to warm up again. They got the win against the DN Freaks, even though it took them 3 games to improve to 2-1. Zeka got to pull out the Akali, and I think at one point his scoreline was 9-1-1, and that is exactly what the Freaks were calling when this dude is styling on that pick. Hanwha Life, I mean, I don't ever see them falling outside of this top 4, this split, aside from some kind of disaster, and obviously wouldn't be shocked in the slightest expecting them to climb towards that 1 spot, but we're just slowly warming up in that post-First Stand era for them to fully come online. And even though they have more wins than T1, because of the level that we saw out of T1 in that Gen.G series, feel like it's safe to put them in that 3 spot. They slammed the DRX squad to kick things off, and after all the off-season drama, how about Guma rocking a 14.6 KDA, the highest damage per minute among anyone in the league, and some of the highest KP percentage among all AD carries. So he has been reinvigorated after this benching moment with Smash, and I think this is what we talked about, is kind of lighting the fire under him. We're not going to say that was a 200 IQ move out of Joe Marsh and T1 to do that, because I truthfully don't think Guma needs extra motivation. This is a guy who is just always laser focused on being the absolute best in his position and as a team player, so didn't need that extra boost. But damn, he's looking scary in that bot lane, and I hope he's not getting benched even though they lost that series, because he has been elite with a capital E so far for T1. It's not enough to get them into that top 2 spot. And BLG, maybe you could say you wouldn't put them 2 if you're doing a hard reset, because they absolutely stomped Thunder Talk, and you're going, okay, but that's Thunder Talk, so not really that impressed, even though it was an absolute Armageddon of stomping But then you saw the BLG plot armor against IG because everything was working against them. They had absolutely no business at least winning that game one. And then Elk pulls out some back-to-back insane team fights, and kind of talked about this when we recapped these games, but it just shows the absolute lethality of this BLG lineup to go from that Elk Ezreal game to a Tank Scion game where Bin is doing like the third or fourth most damage in the entire game and completely taking over games with immaculate flanks. He didn't even need to use the ulti. It was TPs or just beautiful map control through wards that allowed him to get behind enemy lines and set up some 3-4-man decimating smashes. But that's what makes BLG so terrifying, especially when you eventually get to these best of fives, is on any given day, Bin can take over a game. At any given game, Bin can take over, Elk can take over. You can see Knight take over. And not only take over, but these are three guys, three of the main carry positions on this squad who, at times when they're playing at their best, you're talking about being number one in their role. Best in position, not just LPL, but worldwide. They can be in that conversation. There's obviously some guys on Gen.G who are also vying for that number one spot in their respective position. And I'll tell you, if Chovy plays the Victor like he was playing against T1 in that banger slobberknocker matchup game 3, then yeah, Chovy's going to be that top dog. But Gen.G, this is a surprise how fast they've started against the two teams right below them now in the global power rankings, but their main rivals in T1 and Hanwha Life playing at the level that they did. The Hanwha series, I think we were all saying, yeah, okay, it's a bit of a first stand hangover though. They're not playing at their absolute peak. A 60% Hanwha is Gen.G 2-0 stomp. That's the result. Okay, fine. Then the T1 level. It's been so long since we've seen T1 play a competitive game since that Hanwha series like 2 months ago now, basically. To see them still at that high level, Gen.G not only meet and reach that level, but come away with that series win. I'm feeling all-time high about Gen.G. I'm not really ready to say I'm confident they hold on to this one spot for a long time, but for the first time in several splits, that's what's exciting. There's no team that I see just getting locked into the one spot for global power rankings. It's been BLG, Gen.G, or Hanwha for a long time. They've sat there for multiple weeks throughout these regular season and even through playoffs. But it is a very competitive top 5 as we sift through this again. Incredibly way too early power rankings for Split 2. But that is it today for League Unlocked. My name is Eric. Thank you to all you beautiful people for hanging out as always. You know we will catch you on that flippity flip.